The camera recorded everything, but nobody expected it to reveal who was truly being judged. On a quiet afternoon outside Richmond, Virginia, a routine traffic stop began like countless others across America. Cars moved along the highway, people continued their daily lives, and no one passing by could have known that a few minutes on that road would eventually become a lesson about fairness, responsibility, and the power of truth. Behind the wheel of an ordinary sedan was Marcus Bennett, a man who appeared to be just another driver heading home. He was not wearing a judge's robe. He was not surrounded by people who knew his position. There was nothing about his appearance that announced the years of experience, responsibility, and public service he carried with him. To anyone looking from the outside, he was simply a person traveling down the road. But Marcus Bennett was far from ordinary. For more than 20 years, he had served as a federal judge, dedicating his career to the principles of law, fairness, and careful decision-making. Every day, he worked with the responsibility of examining facts, listening to different perspectives, and making decisions that affected people's lives. Yet outside the courtroom, Marcus valued something simple. He believed that every person deserved to be treated with dignity before anyone knew their title. That belief was part of who he was. It was why he lived quietly and why he rarely used his position to receive special treatment. On this particular afternoon, Marcus was driving his personal vehicle after attending a legal conference. His mind was still focused on the discussions he had heard earlier that day, conversations about justice and the importance of public trust. Then, behind him, he noticed the signal of a police vehicle. A young officer named Ethan Collins had decided to conduct a traffic stop. Ethan was a rookie police officer still learning the demands of the job. Like many new officers, he wanted to do everything correctly. He wanted to prove that he could handle responsibility. He believed in following procedures and doing what he thought was necessary to keep the roads safe. From his perspective, this was simply another traffic stop. A driver, a vehicle, a situation to manage. He had no idea who was sitting behind the wheel. He did not know that the person he was about to question had spent decades inside the legal system. He did not know that the man in front of him understood the meaning of authority just as deeply as anyone wearing a badge. When Marcus pulled over and calmly waited, he had no intention of making the moment about his position. He did not reach for his phone to call attention to his career. He did not announce his title. He simply waited and prepared to have a respectful conversation. Because Marcus believed something that had guided his entire life. True justice should not depend on knowing someone's name, career, or status. It should begin with how people choose to treat each other before any of those details are revealed. As Officer Collins approached the vehicle, neither man knew how important the next few minutes would become. One believed he was meeting an ordinary driver. The other knew that every interaction was a chance to show what fairness truly meant. And hidden inside the dashboard of that police vehicle was a silent witness that would later show the world exactly what happened on that road. The quiet road outside Richmond, Virginia, continued moving around them. But inside that brief moment between a driver and a rookie officer, something much deeper was unfolding. Marcus Bennett remained calm inside his vehicle, waiting patiently as Officer Ethan Collins approached. To Marcus, this was not an unusual situation. He understood that traffic stops were part of everyday law enforcement. He also understood that the person standing at the window represented a responsibility that required patience, communication, and fairness. After decades inside the legal system, Marcus knew that every person deserved the chance to be heard. Officer Collins walked toward the vehicle believing he was handling a normal situation. He checked the information available to him and prepared to ask the standard questions that came with his duties. He did not know the person in front of him was a federal judge. He did not know that Marcus Bennett had spent years studying the very principles of justice that officers like him work to uphold. He only knew what he could see in that moment. Marcus noticed the young officer's approach and responded respectfully. He answered the questions clearly and followed the conversation calmly. He did not mention his position. He did not introduce himself by his title. He believed that a person's importance should not determine how they are treated. Respect should come first, not after someone's identity becomes known. That belief came from years of experience. Marcus had sat in courtrooms where people entered with different backgrounds, different stories, and different challenges. He had learned that assumptions could create mistakes if people were unwilling to look deeper. Officer Collins, meanwhile, was focused on doing everything correctly. As a rookie officer, he was still developing his judgment and learning how every situation could carry unexpected details. He wanted to show that he was prepared. He wanted to prove that he could handle responsibility. But experience often teaches lessons that cannot be learned from training alone. Sometimes the most important moments are the ones where people realize there is more to a situation than what first appears. The conversation continued beside the road, and the dashboard camera quietly recorded every second. It captured the words spoken, the actions taken, and the choices made by both individuals. Neither Marcus nor Officer Collins thought much about the camera at that moment. It was simply part of the patrol vehicle. But later, it would become an important piece of the story. For now, everything remained centered on a simple interaction between two people who did not yet understand each other's full story. Marcus knew who he was, but he also knew that his title did not make him more deserving of respect than anyone else. Officer Collins knew he had a duty, but he had not yet discovered how important it was to look beyond the surface of every situation. The difference between them was not about authority. It was about perspective. One man had spent years learning that justice required patience. The other was beginning his career and learning that responsibility required more than following steps. It required understanding people. As the conversation continued, the road remained quiet, but the meaning of the moment was becoming clearer. This was never just about a traffic stop. It was about how people respond when they do not know the full story. And soon, the truth hidden behind that ordinary afternoon would reveal why every second recorded on that dashboard camera mattered. The dashboard camera continued recording as the conversation between Marcus Bennett and Officer Ethan Collins moved forward on the quiet Virginia road. Neither man realized that the ordinary details of that afternoon would later become the focus of a much larger discussion about responsibility, fairness, and the importance of seeing beyond first impressions. For Marcus, the situation remained simple. He was a driver answering questions from an officer doing his job. He did not see the need to turn the moment into a demonstration of his position. In his years as a federal judge, Marcus had learned that the strength of the law came from consistency. The law could not be meaningful if people were treated differently based on what they owned, what they achieved, or who they were known to be. Officer Ethan Collins continued the conversation while trying to understand the situation in front of him. As a rookie officer, every interaction was an opportunity to learn. He had studied procedures, completed training, and prepared himself for the responsibilities of the job. But there were lessons that only came through real experiences with real people. This was one of those moments. Marcus noticed the young officer's uncertainty and responded with patience. He understood that every professional had to begin somewhere. He also understood that a person's approach in a difficult moment often revealed their character more than their words did. Everyone starts somewhere, Marcus thought, remembering his own early years of learning how to make careful decisions. The difference between a good decision and a poor one was often found in the willingness to listen. The conversation remained calm, but small details began to stand out. Officer Collins noticed that Marcus was not behaving like someone trying to avoid responsibility. He was not searching for excuses or attempting to use influence. Instead, he was simply communicating clearly and respectfully. That made the situation different from what the officer expected. Marcus, meanwhile, continued allowing the process to unfold naturally. He knew that revealing his position immediately could change the entire interaction. People often reacted differently when they discovered someone's title. He wanted the moment to show something more important. He wanted the focus to remain on how people treated each other before knowing anything extra. The dashboard camera captured every detail without judgment. It recorded the pauses, the questions, and the responses. It did not know Marcus was a judge. It did not know Ethan was a rookie officer. It simply recorded what happened. That was what made it so important. Unlike human memory, which could be influenced by emotions and personal perspectives, the camera preserved the moment exactly as it occurred. As the minutes passed, the situation reached a point where more information was needed. Officer Collins continued reviewing the details available to him, unaware that the next discovery would completely change his understanding of the person standing before him. Marcus remained composed, knowing that the truth did not need to be forced. It only needed the opportunity to appear. The young officer believed he was evaluating a situation. He did not yet realize that the situation was also revealing something about the way he approached responsibility. Because sometimes the most important lessons do not come from dramatic moments. They come from ordinary encounters where people are given the chance to choose patience, fairness, and understanding. And on that quiet road in Virginia, a rookie officer and a federal judge were about to discover that the truth behind a person is rarely visible at first glance. The quiet road outside Richmond remained unchanged, but the meaning of the moment between Marcus Bennett and Officer Ethan Collins was beginning to shift. What started as a simple traffic stop was becoming something far more significant. The dashboard camera continued recording every second, capturing an interaction that neither person realized would later be examined closely. For now, it was still just a conversation between two strangers with completely different experiences. Officer Collins continued reviewing the information in front of him. He was focused on doing his job correctly, following the steps he had been taught during training. As a rookie officer, he understood that responsibility came with careful attention to details. He wanted to show that he could handle situations professionally. But experience often reveals that responsibility is not only about knowing what to do. It is also about understanding the person standing in front of you. Marcus remained calm throughout the interaction. He answered questions respectfully and allowed the process to continue without trying to influence the outcome. He knew that mentioning his position as a federal judge could instantly change the atmosphere. People often reacted differently when they discovered someone's title. But Marcus believed that respect should not appear only after someone's importance became known. It should exist from the beginning. That belief came from years of watching people enter his courtroom with different backgrounds and different stories. He had seen how quickly assumptions could form when people only looked at the surface. He had also seen how much better decisions became when people took the time to understand the complete picture. As the conversation continued, Officer Collins noticed that something about Marcus was different. The driver was not defensive. He was not trying to challenge authority. He was not looking for special treatment. Instead, he was communicating with the same patience and professionalism expected from someone who understood the responsibility of public service. That realization created a moment of curiosity. Who exactly was this person? The officer looked again at the information available to him. The name seemed familiar, but he could not immediately connect it to anything. Marcus noticed the change in expression but remained silent. He understood that truth had its own timing. He did not need to announce who he was. He did not need to use his position to change the direction of the conversation. He simply allowed the facts to appear naturally. Meanwhile, the dashboard camera continued its silent work. It recorded not only the words spoken, but also the choices made. It captured Marcus's patience and Officer Collins's approach. It preserved a moment before anyone knew the full story. That was what made the recording so important. It showed the reality of the interaction without titles, assumptions, or outside opinions. The camera did not know a judge was sitting inside the vehicle. It did not know a rookie officer was standing beside it. It only showed two people facing a moment that would eventually teach them both something valuable. As more questions were answered, Officer Collins began realizing that this was not a typical encounter. There was something about Marcus's confidence and calmness that suggested a lifetime of experience. But the most important discovery was not about his career. It was about his character. Because even before anyone knew Marcus Bennett was a federal judge, he had already shown the qualities people expected from someone who carried great responsibility: patience, respect, and the ability to remain fair when circumstances were uncertain. The moment before the truth was revealed was becoming the most important part of the story, because the greatest lessons often happen before people know who they are standing in front of. The afternoon on the Virginia roadside continued, but the moment when everything changed was finally approaching. For several minutes, Marcus Bennett and Officer Ethan Collins had been standing in the same place, yet they were looking at the situation from completely different perspectives. Officer Collins still believed he was handling a standard traffic stop. Marcus understood that the interaction represented something much larger. Not because of his position, but because of the lesson hidden within the moment. As Officer Collins reviewed the information again, a detail caught his attention. The name in front of him seemed familiar. He paused for a moment, looking carefully at the documents and then back at Marcus. There was something about the name that connected with a person he had heard about before. Someone known not because of fame, but because of years of service and dedication to the legal system. "Are you Judge Marcus Bennett?" Officer Collins finally asked. The question changed the atmosphere instantly. Marcus calmly confirmed who he was. He did not say it with pride or as a way to gain control of the situation. He simply acknowledged the truth. He was a federal judge. The person standing beside the road was someone who had spent decades working with the very principles that guided law enforcement and the justice system. For Officer Collins, the realization was unexpected. The driver he had viewed as an ordinary person was someone whose professional life revolved around fairness, evidence, and careful decisions. But Marcus did not use the moment to criticize him. He did not turn the conversation into a lecture. Instead, he continued speaking with the same calm attitude he had shown from the beginning. "The important thing is not my title," Marcus said. "The important thing is how every person is treated before their title is known." Those words carried more weight because they came from someone who had spent years inside courtrooms. Marcus understood that justice was not only about decisions made after reviewing evidence. It was also about the moments before people knew the full story. Officer Collins reflected on the previous minutes. He thought about how different the interaction might have been if Marcus had immediately announced that he was a judge. The conversation could have changed instantly. People often responded differently when they discovered someone's status or position, but that was exactly why Marcus had chosen not to reveal it at the beginning. He wanted the moment to show something important. Respect should not be given because someone has influence. Respect should exist because every person deserves it. The dashboard camera continued recording. It captured the moment when a routine encounter became a lesson about responsibility. It showed that Marcus had remained patient before his identity was known and continued to remain patient after it was revealed. That detail mattered. His character did not appear because people discovered his title. His character had already been visible from the start. Officer Collins began to understand that the situation was not simply about identifying a driver or completing a procedure. It was about recognizing the responsibility that came with authority. Person could wear a badge. Person could wear a robe. But neither symbol alone defined someone's character. The choices made in ordinary moments revealed much more. As the truth became clear on that quiet road, the biggest surprise was not that Marcus Bennett was a federal judge. The biggest surprise was that he had shown the qualities of one long before anyone knew his name. The quiet road outside Richmond, Virginia, had become the place where a simple interaction revealed a much deeper lesson. After Officer Ethan Collins discovered that the driver in front of him was Judge Marcus Bennett, the meaning of the entire encounter changed. But Marcus did not want the moment to become a story about his position. He wanted it to remain a reminder about something more important: how people choose to treat each other before they know the full truth. Officer Collins stood there reflecting on the conversation that had taken place. He thought about the first moments of the traffic stop and how little he had known about the person behind the wheel. He had seen a driver. He had seen a situation that required attention. But he had not seen the decades of experience, service, and responsibility that Marcus carried. The realization was not about discovering that Marcus was important. It was about understanding that importance should never be the reason someone receives respect. Marcus explained that his work as a federal judge had taught him one valuable lesson over and over again. Facts mattered. Evidence mattered. But before facts and evidence could be considered, people had to be willing to listen. Every person has a story that you may not see immediately, Marcus said. The responsibility is to treat them fairly while you are learning that story. Those words stayed with Officer Collins because they connected to something every public servant faced. Decisions often had to be made with limited information. But limited information did not mean people should stop being thoughtful. It meant they had to be even more careful. The dashboard camera continued recording, preserving every moment of the interaction. It showed the calm conversation, the questions asked, and the way both individuals responded. It captured something that would later become important. It showed that Marcus's behavior did not change after his identity was revealed. He was patient before anyone knew his title, and he remained patient after it became known. That detail separated appearance from character. Officer Collins began thinking about his own role differently. Being an officer was not only about having the authority to perform a task. It was about understanding the responsibility behind that authority. The badge represented public trust, and public trust was built through everyday choices. Marcus understood that better than most people. He had spent years inside courtrooms where every decision required careful consideration. He knew that fairness was not just a word used in legal discussions. It was something that had to be practiced in real moments with real people. The encounter became a lesson for both men. For Officer Collins, it was a reminder that experience was not only gained through time, it was gained through reflection. For Marcus, it was another example of why patience and dignity mattered. As the conversation continued, the focus shifted away from the traffic stop itself. The road, the vehicle, and the original reason for the interaction became less important than the lesson that had emerged. The true question was no longer about who had authority. It was about how authority should be used. Because a badge and a judicial robe represented different responsibilities, but both carried the same expectation. Serve with fairness, act with integrity, and remember the humanity of every person involved. And as the dashboard camera continued to record, it preserved a moment when two different worlds met and discovered that the greatest measure of responsibility was not the power someone held, but the wisdom they showed when using it. The road was quiet again after the conversation between Marcus Bennett and Officer Ethan Collins came to an end, but the impact of that moment continued far beyond those few minutes. What had started as a routine interaction had become a powerful reminder that every decision made by people in positions of responsibility could leave a lasting impression. The dashboard camera had recorded everything, preserving a moment that showed more than words. It showed patience, professionalism, and the importance of accountability. In the days that followed, the recording became the focus of careful review. The purpose was not to create conflict, but to understand what happened and what lessons could be learned. For Marcus, this was never about personal recognition. He did not want attention because of his title. He wanted attention on the bigger issue, how systems and individuals could continue improving the way they served the public. Marcus had spent his career inside the justice system, and he understood that accountability was not about blaming one person. It was about examining decisions, learning from them, and making sure that responsibility was taken seriously. Officer Ethan Collins also found himself reflecting on the experience. He thought about the importance of every interaction, especially the ones where the full story was not immediately visible. As a rookie officer, he was still developing his understanding of what public service truly meant. Training could teach procedures, but real experiences taught judgment. He realized that authority was not measured by how quickly someone could take control of a situation. It was measured by how carefully someone could handle responsibility. The review of the dashboard footage highlighted something important. The recording showed that Marcus had remained respectful throughout the entire encounter. It also showed that the conversation had changed naturally once more information became available. The lesson was clear. A person's identity, profession, or position should not determine whether they receive fairness. Fairness should be the starting point. The discussion around the incident also reached beyond Marcus and Ethan. It raised broader questions about trust between communities and the people responsible for protecting them. Public confidence is built through thousands of small moments. A respectful conversation, a careful decision, a willingness to listen before reaching conclusions. Those moments may seem ordinary, but together they define how people experience justice in everyday life. Marcus understood that one event could not answer every question about society or institutions, but he also believed that meaningful change often began with individual choices. A single interaction could become an opportunity for reflection. A single mistake could become a lesson. A single conversation could remind people why fairness mattered. For Officer Collins, the experience became part of his journey as a public servant. It reminded him that every person he encountered had a story that might not be immediately visible. It encouraged him to look beyond the surface and approach each situation with greater awareness. For Marcus, the moment confirmed something he had believed for years. True justice was not only found inside courtrooms. It was found in everyday decisions made by ordinary people. The dashboard camera did more than record an encounter. It captured a lesson about responsibility, understanding, and the importance of seeing people as individuals before seeing them as assumptions. Because in the end, the greatest test of authority was not how much power someone had. It was how much fairness they carried when using it. The story of the quiet roadside encounter continued to spread, not because of conflict, but because it revealed something many people often forget. Behind every interaction is a person with a life, a history, and a story that may never be visible at first glance. For Marcus Bennett, the experience reinforced a belief he had carried throughout his career as a federal judge. Justice was not only found in courtrooms, written decisions, or legal arguments. It was also found in everyday moments when people had the opportunity to choose patience over assumptions and understanding over judgment. After the review of the dashboard footage, Marcus was asked about the experience and what he believed should happen next. Many expected him to focus on consequences. Many expected him to use his position to demand a response. But Marcus approached the situation differently. He believed that accountability and improvement could exist together. He understood that Officer Ethan Collins was a young professional still learning the weight of his responsibilities. A mistake or difficult moment did not have to define an entire career. What mattered was whether people were willing to learn from those moments and become better because of them. Marcus explained that the purpose of justice was not simply to punish. The purpose was to protect fairness, encourage responsibility, and create conditions where people could trust the systems around them. Those words reflected the same principles he had followed throughout his years on the bench. Every case had people behind the paperwork. Every decision affected real lives. Every person deserved to be considered with care. Officer Collins also viewed the experience differently after taking time to reflect. The encounter became a turning point in how he understood his role. He realized that wearing a badge was not only about having authority. It was about carrying the trust of the community. Every conversation, every decision, and every interaction represented something larger than the individual moment. He began to understand that professionalism was not only measured by following procedures. It was also measured by empathy, awareness, and the ability to recognize the humanity of the person standing in front of him. The dashboard camera remained an important part of the story because it provided a clear record of what happened. It showed a moment before identities were revealed and after they became known. It demonstrated that respect should not depend on discovering someone's position or achievements. Respect should be present from the beginning. The lesson reached beyond Marcus and Ethan. It became a reminder for anyone who holds responsibility over others. Whether someone wears a badge, a uniform, or any symbol of authority, the true measure of that responsibility comes from how they treat people during ordinary moments. Marcus did not leave the situation wanting recognition. He left hoping that people would remember the lesson. A person's value is not determined by how much power they hold. It is shown by how they use the power and influence they have. The encounter between a federal judge and a rookie officer became more than a roadside conversation. It became a reflection of what happens when truth, patience, and accountability meet. Because the strongest form of justice is not found in proving who has more authority. It is found in creating a world where every person is treated with dignity before anyone knows their name. Years after that quiet afternoon on the road outside Richmond, Virginia, the lesson from that moment continued to remain powerful because it was never only about one traffic stop. It was about the choices people make when they are faced with uncertainty. It was about the importance of patience before judgment and respect before recognition. Marcus Bennett returned to the work that had defined his life. Inside the courtroom, he continued to focus on fairness, careful decisions, and the belief that every person deserved to be heard. The experience did not change who he was because his values had already been established long before that day. He had always believed that true authority was not shown by demanding attention. It was shown through responsibility, understanding, and the ability to remain fair even when circumstances were complicated. Officer Ethan Collins also carried the memory of that encounter into his own career. The moment became a reminder that every person he met had a story beyond what could be seen immediately. He learned that professionalism was not only about knowing the rules. It was about understanding the people affected by those rules. A badge represented responsibility, and responsibility required awareness, patience, and humility. The dashboard camera that recorded the encounter became more than a piece of equipment. It became a reminder that truth does not depend on appearances. It does not depend on titles being revealed. At the right moment, it simply exists waiting to be recognized. The recording showed something important. Marcus Bennett did not become respectful after Officer Collins learned he was a federal judge. He was respectful from the beginning. His character was visible before his title was known. That was the part of the story that mattered most. In a world where people are often judged quickly, the encounter showed the importance of slowing down and seeing the person before making conclusions. The story also became a reminder that accountability should not be viewed only as a consequence. It can also be an opportunity for growth. People and institutions improve when they are willing to examine difficult moments honestly. They become stronger when they learn from experiences instead of ignoring them. Marcus understood that lasting change does not come from embarrassment or anger. It comes from reflection, education, and the willingness to do better. The meeting between a federal judge and a rookie officer represented two different paths crossing for a brief moment. One person carried decades of legal experience. The other was just beginning a career built around public service. Yet both walked away with the same lesson. The way people are treated in ordinary moments reveals the true meaning of justice. A courtroom, a patrol vehicle, and a quiet road may seem like completely different places, but they all share one important connection. They are places where decisions are made, and those decisions affect real people. The greatest lesson from that afternoon was not about a title, a badge, or a position. It was about humanity. Because before anyone is judged by their career, their background, or their appearance, they are simply a person deserving of dignity. And sometimes the most powerful moments of justice are not the ones where someone wins. They are the ones where people learn to see each other more clearly.